Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Film Frauds, or myself, Matt, and my co-host Tyler.
Hello.
Provide our completely unprofessional, 100% biased opinions on the movies of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. But today we are continuing our modern classics series, the search for modern classics. And last time we did Iron Man, and today we're further being Disney shills by talking about Star Wars, Disney Star Wars. Tyler, what is the modern classic series, and what movie specifically are we talking about, and why?
So, oh man. So modern
This was
classics.
your idea, so this is
This
all
is
on you to
this.
explain.
It's like football Sunday. The Patriots are going to lose. We're sitting here. No, it's so modern classics. Essentially, when we look at movies, 21st century and on, but maybe not like early 21st century. Probably like 2008. We keep bumping the year back, but movies that we think have the potential to be classics 40, 50, 60 years down the line. Kind of trying to watch these, gauge their impact, see why we think they could be classic movies. I mean, last week we did Iron Man, and it is definitely not the best movie that we've done, but it has a like irrevocably clear impact on like the last 15 years of movies because of everything with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff. So now today we are talking about The Last Jedi.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
A movie that I don't even know how to begin. It's like a landmine at this point. It's still crazy. Like every like month, like once a month, I'll check Twitter or like X, I guess now it's called, and it'll be like The Last Jedi, and people will be arguing about the quality of this movie on Twitter. It's like it has massive like fans and people who don't like it.
So this is the definitive putting the debate to rest.
Yeah. This is
Episode.
where we'll settle it now. Matt, what is before we even talk about the movie, we gotta contextualize a little bit. What is your relationship with like Star Wars, with these type of movies, with the property, the franchise, anything?
So when I was a kid, loved Star Wars. Star Wars was my thing. Tons of Star Wars toys, Star Wars video games, watch the movies endlessly. And like me and many other little Star Wars fans, we all had our Santa Claus isn't real moment where we realized the prequels were bad.
When was that for
And
you?
what?
When was that for you? When you're
It
like, these
was
kind of suck.
like I don't know exactly. I think like middle school or like early high school, I realized I'm like, oh, these movies really are not that good. And I still really enjoy the original trilogy. And I just love, I think the Star Wars franchise made me love like sci-fi epics. Like since then, like I love The Expanse, I love Mass Effect. I wrote a book that's a sci-fi epic. Like Star Wars is like one of the biggest influences on me as a person, and that will always be the case. And going into like the revamp of Star Wars, I was very excited. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens, and going into The Last Jedi, I was like beyond hyped. Like I remember going to seeing with my cousin Cam, who you know,
Yeah.
and like super excited. And then saw the movie and I thought it was kind of a mess. And that's kind of like where me and a lot of other people started to realize that like Disney was brilliant with its marketing, like the nostalgia aspect of its marketing, especially earlier on when they bought Star Wars, and like it was Star Wars could do nothing wrong, basically. Like I think today, like, because there's just so many things to like, and there's like, you know, the internet has communities for everyone. Like, there really isn't anything that like completely takes over the zeitgeist anymore. People have like their niches, and
Yep.
some of those niches have like millions of people who like the stuff. But like, you could conceivably, I mean, this is a bad example, but like Taylor Swift, like millions and millions of Taylor Swift fans, but you know, if someone told me they never listened to Taylor Swift song as well, who's like my age, I wouldn't be surprised either, because it's like it's definitely conceivable that you just don't listen to that person or have
Yeah.
never actually heard a song. Star Wars was like the closest thing to something that like everyone knew about coming out. Like everyone knew that the new trilogy was coming out, and there was a lot of hype around it. And Last Jedi came out, and I kind of feel like as someone who really liked The Force Awakens, I was like, well, this basically has nothing to do with The Force Awakens, and it just felt really awkward to me. And then it sort of I didn't go as far as like some of the people we're going to be talking about later, but it definitely reminded me that the fantasy around Star Wars being perfect, or like this new wave of Star Wars stuff being like flawless, was over, and that's when the cracks started to show. So like, what about you? What is your history with Star Wars?
So I'm like the complete inverse of you. When I was younger, I think like 8 or 9, I had a neighbor who gave me the original trilogy on VHS and was like, "You'll love these." And I put them in my little like box TV, and I remember watching at that age and going, "I don't really like these." Like it's like cool. Like I think there's a difference between like liking the content and being a young child. What Star Wars is like, not only like a cultural staple, but like a mainstay in like young children. Like I had lightsabers, I had Star Wars action figures, I played the video games, but I didn't like care about the movies that much. I went and saw like I've seen I so like just to clarify, like I want to be completely blunt about this. I have no emotional ties to anything Star Wars related. Like the
I
lightsabers are
remember we
cool.
saw the trailer for The Force Awakens in theaters, and like we're like, yeah, this movie's gonna be so sick. And I'm like, Tyler, what do you think about the other Star Wars movies? He goes, I haven't seen any of them. I'm
Yeah.
like, so why are you excited about this movie?
Okay, so here's the
You're like,
thing.
Disney
So
told me to be excited.
I don't remember saying I haven't seen it because I have seen them. I've seen the
Ugh.
original trilogy. I saw them when I was younger, and then like 4 or 5 years ago, I watched them through again, and I'm like, oh, they're good movies. Like I get the appeal. When I was younger though, I think my most watched movie of all time is probably Star Wars: Attack of the Clones. I hate that movie. That it's
That was my
weird.
favorite Star Wars movie when I was a
That's
kid too.
wild. That was, but like so we got it on DVD, and this was when we had like a DVD player in our car. So every like car trip, because I had a bunch of siblings, my parents needed like us to shut up because they would put on Star Wars Attack of the Clones. So I've seen that movie maybe like 15, 20 times all the way through. And even when I was younger, I was like, this is boring. Like, I don't like this. I went and saw Revenge of the Sith in theaters. Like, and then I just didn't care about these movies. I was too young. I didn't really like them. And then that Force Awakens trailer came out, and I was like, this is the coolest fucking trailer ever. And we went and saw the movie. It was like a big deal for us. We saw that movie together. And it was like a really good movie. And I'll still stand by this. I don't really care that it is basically A New Hope done over again. It's really cool to me. I really like what they were putting forward. I really like the stuff they tried to do. I really like the ideas they were going for. I like the direction they were trying to go in. Star Wars has always been like really narrow in my mind. I don't know about a lot about like the extended canon, the everything. There was that animated show when we were younger too that I remember watching some of. And then we went and saw The Last Jedi, and I was pretty much in the same boat where you're watching it and you're like, did they not like The Force Awakens? Like, did they not like care about the previous movie? And that was when you're also like starting to get more into movies and you're like, this doesn't feel very connected or planned. And I kind of held that opinion. I saw this movie, The Last Jedi, twice in theaters, and both times I was like, I might be missing something. Like, this doesn't feel that very good. And then I watched it again, and we'll probably talk more in depth about our opinions on it. But then you watch like The Rise of Skywalker, and you're like, this thing's kind of a mess too. And it's just all like a massive like introspection. And Last Jedi has been like absorbed by like culture that we'll probably talk about in a little bit. But it has had like a very clear impact on like online media personalities. This kind of like Force Awakens, Last Jedi element of it. I don't care about Star Wars like at all, if I'm going to be honest. Like that might sound very harsh, but it does nothing about it interests me. It feels very like bland to me. What do you think?
And so when did you rewatch Last Jedi? Like a couple days ago, right?
I watched it Thursday night. Yeah, watched it an hour, and then we played Minecraft, and then I
Oh,
came back and finished it. So I watched it technically in like 2 sittings, but like an hour, then the final hour and a half.
so I watched it all in one sitting yesterday, and I think on this rewatch, because I don't think I've seen it since I saw it in theaters
Are you in the same boat?
in
Yeah.
2017. And my largest takeaway from rewatching this is that all my criticisms about the film like are the same. Like I like
Yeah.
the terrible jokes. I mean, like again, this stuff has been talked to death, like the yo mama joke at the start,
Yeah.
and like really like it's sort of like laid the foundation of like that subversion thing that Disney would be doing with all of its major franchises of like, oh, look, an emotional moment, huh, joke sort
Yep.
of thing, where it has to be kind of like too cool for its own good.
Yep.
And we talked about this a little bit in like Iron Man discussion as well. But I would say the good in this movie really stood out to me. And a lot of it like overshadowed the bad, and I like this
Really?
movie more on a rewatch. And I thought the good of this movie was more brilliant than I gave it credit for on the
Interesting.
first viewing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have a lot to ask about that then. So I think before we
Yes.
even can talk specifically about the, because I want to be clear. For me, it was I was kind of the inverse of you. The stuff that was really bad really stood out to me more. But there's like, I do think, and we'll talk about this more specifically. This movie's 2.5 hours long. There is like
Too long.
it's way too long. There is 40 minutes of this movie that I think are genuinely great. And
Mm.
it's like a 40-minute section that we'll probably talk about. We have to talk though about the harbinger of this kind of discourse, the person who like kind of started it, the director of the movie, Ryan Johnson, because he was given this movie. He had directed 3 feature-length movies before. He had done Brick, he had done Brothers Bloom, and he had done Looper. Looper was a pretty popular movie when we were younger. It was like this cool like sci-fi movie. I did not rewatch it for this, but I remember it fondly. I did watch Brick and Brothers Bloom in preparation. We have seen Knives Out. We saw Knives Out together. We both left Knives Out going, that was one of the more fun movies we've seen recently. And I like the sequel. I think the sequel's really, really good too. He is a fascinating director. Do you have any like type of relationship with him? What's your stance on Ryan Johnson?
I saw Looper in high school.
Yeah,
I remember
2012.
liking the start of it, and then
Yeah.
once they go to the farm, I didn't like the movie. Not
Okay.
that I hated it, but I feel like it was really interesting. The world was interesting, and then it's like, oh, here's an interesting world. Now let's go to the outskirts where none of this really matters.
Yeah.
So I thought it was all right. Love Knives Out. Seen it twice. I think Knives Out is probably his most consistently good movie.
Yes.
And then Glass Candle, much like
Glass
Glass
Onion.
Jedi. What? Glass Onion.
Yeah.
Glass Candle. It's not Game of Thrones. Much like Glass Jedi and this review, it sours on me the more time
Okay.
goes on.
Interesting.
I think Ryan Johnson, first of all, is an excellent filmmaker. We'll
Yes.
talk more about The Last Jedi here later, but like there are 2 moments of like multiple climaxes happening at the same time that are, interspliced together, and it is like masterful how he does that.
Hmm.
And then like, but I think my issue with him mostly comes as a writer. I think like he is clever, but I think sometimes he's too obsessed with being clever that he overlooks like larger story issues. It's like, for example, spoiler for Glass Onion. Like Glass Onion has all these like quirky, kooky characters and whatever who all just stand there and watch like the end happen and have no influence at all in the actual end of the movie. They just stand there and go, whoa, that's weird, like things like that. And it's like you have all these characters, they do nothing, like they literally do nothing in the movie. And the same thing with The Last Jedi. It's like there's one plot line which I'll get to that I think is pretty much brilliant, and then like everything else is like jokey and dumb and just childish to the point where it's condescending. And again, I think it's like I think he just becomes obsessed with being too smart for his own good, that like there are larger strokes that are ultimately overlooked.
Yeah. So I completely agree. So for me, Ryan Johnson is like, he understands the genre that he makes movies in, I think, incredibly well. If you've seen, like, Brick is like a neo-noir film. Brothers Bloom is like a con man heist movie. Looper is a sci-fi like deconstruction. Knives Out is a murder mystery. Glass Onion is an even like further murder mystery deconstructed. Ryan Johnson is very clearly focused and has an interest in examining the genre in which he makes movies and then deconstructing it to try to either create something interesting or to add his own unique spin on it. The issues, which I kind of completely agree with like a movie like Brick, which by the way, kind of a weird, like, remembering. I have known about Brick since I was like 13, never watched it. I remembered it because Chris Stuckman did a Blu-ray tour when I was like 13, 14, and he had Brick as like one of the first movies. I remember being super interested in that, but I finally got around to watching it, and it's the same with like this and Brothers Bloom. Brick and Brothers Bloom it's a movie that eventually I think collapses under its own weight a little bit. Brick is a really fun, creative, interesting movie that I think, due to its runtime, which we'll probably talk about with The Last Jedi, it kind of starts to fall in on itself a little bit. Its creativeness and its world doesn't support a movie of its length or its story. I think the same thing happens with Brothers Bloom. I think the first 45 minutes of Brothers Bloom are legitimately excellent, creative, unique, like energetic storytelling, and then the back hour and 15 is kind of dull. I think Knives Out, like you said, is probably his most complete movie. Even just remembering Looper, you establish this really cool sci-fi world and then kind of like deconstruct it to make it more small scale and human. Whether or not it is successful is up to your probably own interpretation, but The Last Jedi is like entirely an attempt. To me, like The Last Jedi is this attempt at deconstructing a Star Wars genre, a genre and a universe that like desperately needs like a new spin on it. Bristling with like the studio heads. And I think you can see and feel that impact across many different realms. We'll talk about The Last Jedi more in detail, but it's like I really like Rian Johnson as a director. I really respect what he's trying to do, and I think this is like like kind of like a really big step down from what he's typically makes. But even with like The Last Jedi, it's impossible to talk about it without first talking about like The Force Awakens, because the entire
which
movie
I rewatched
you
this
rewatched.
week.
I've seen it like 4 or 5 times in my life. I really like it, but The Last Jedi is the inverse, if not complete eradication or attempted rewrite of The Force Awakens at times. What's your relationship with like The Force Awakens? Like, what do you think about it? What was basically your stance on like a rewatch for you?
So I've rewatched Force Awakens a couple of times, and it's a movie where sometimes I'm like, this movie's really good, and sometimes
Yep.
I'm like, this movie's kind of like mid. And
Yep.
I kind of sway back and forth. On this rewatch, I came out of it saying like, oh, this movie's really good. Like it was one of the more positive viewings I had of the movie. And so rewatching this and The Last Jedi, you're right in the sense that like from a overall plot standpoint, a lot of it does not relate and does not carry through. But like I would say from the Rey and Kylo arcs, a lot of it is taken.
Yes.
And my hot take will be that I think Rey's character arc from The Force Awakens to Rise of Skywalker makes sense. I'm not sure if they intended for it to make sense, but it does kind of make sense to me.
Okay.
So given the context that she is the daughter of Darth Sidious, which is what is established in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, spoilers, by the way. We're gonna spoil this entire fucking trilogy. At this
spoilers.
point,
I mean, yeah, everyone knows. The scene where I think probably the best scene in Force Awakens is the final conversation between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Yeah.
And like that scene where she has her eyes closed and it's like use the Force, and that's when she gets her strength to overcome him. And then she's like stalking him, like he's hurt and wounded, and like it's directed in a way where she's like a wolf, like prowling around him. And I like the idea that in that moment, like you think when you first watching, like, oh, it's like the Force or like Obi-Wan in her head or something. Like, what if that's Darth Sidious giving her the strength to beat him? And like that's when the evil comes out. And that is continued in The Last Jedi where Luke is like, they had that dream sequence and Luke is like, you went right into the darkness. Like you didn't even hesitate to go into the darkness.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is consistent. So anyone who says like her character is a complete failure or whatever is just wrong. Like they just are not even attempting to engage in this in an intelligent way. Whether or not J.J. Abrams intended her to be the daughter of Darth Sidious from day one is up in the air. But I do think there is evidence to suggest that it is. And I think it elevates The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, knowing that she is the daughter of Darth Sidious. And so The Force Awakens is a movie that I rewatch, and then as the days have gone on, like I still think very positively of it. I think the worst is the Death Star. What is the new Death Star called?
Like the
Star Killer base. Like when it's eradicating 5 planets and no one cares at all. Like afterwards, like there's no sense of like they're not refugees. There's no one crying. Like that's a movie at its absolute worst. But at its heights, I think it's like classic Star Wars again. Like even just like from a directing standpoint, the fight in the woods with Rey and Finn versus Kylo Ren, like Abrams has like so many like still shots, which the movie is so fast paced and constantly moving, like, and it takes its time. It's like an art movie, and it's like some of the shots are like some of the best shots in cinema to me. I think it's really great, and I think like the implications through like visual storytelling, such as Rey stalking him like a wolf in the snow. Like there's a ton you can take away from it too, and I think it's great. And part of me does wish that J.J. Abrams had full control of the trilogy, because I don't think he's quite as mystery box as his reputation gives him for. I know like Lost is like his most infamous example of like mystery box. He had full control of that, and then nothing ended up mattering at the end. I haven't seen Lost, so I can't speak of it. I don't care
about Lost,
But Star Trek, I rewatched Star Trek's 2008 and Into Darkness, 2009 Star Trek and Into Darkness, and like those movies I mean, they're dumb, but
yeah.
they make sense. There's not like a lot of unsolved mysteries. Like it makes sense
Yeah.
why there's a new Kirk, why there's a new Spock, blah blah blah. Like it all relatively makes
Yeah.
sense. And when we go talk about more about Ryan Johnson, Last Jedi, he leaves Abrams with nothing. By the end of Last Jedi, he leaves Abrams with nothing. He does not care at all about any of the mysteries J.J. Abrams sets up in The Force Awakens. And so, like, I feel like that mystery, J.J. Abrams is a bad writer, he just cares about mystery boxes, isn't necessarily true. Because I do think that it'd be like if you wrote half of a novel and then someone wrote like the second third of that novel, and then you're like completely undoing everything you did, and you're like, well, now I have to scramble and make sense of it.
Yep.
It's funny because I was just thinking about this a couple days ago. You know how like in like the early to mid 2010s, there's a lot of like Deathly Hallows Part 1, Part 2, Mockingjay Part 1, Part 2. If there was ever like a reasonable time to do like Star Wars Episode 9 Parts 1 and Part 2, it would have been right here. It would have given him more time to do what he needed to do, but that did not happen.
This is exactly like the thing is like even just talking about like the splitting it into two parts is Star Wars is very beholden to a formula at this point. It's stuck in its own like lore and characters and is like chained to the familiar event. So it's really hard for something to branch out. Now I gotta be completely honest. I haven't seen Andor. Everybody, including you, is like Andor's the fucking
Andor
best.
is completely worth all the years of Star Wars. It is
Okay.
so good.
I've heard, but like I don't care about the Mandalorian. Like it's all this kind of like world and lore.
Mandalorian
like,
is bad.
Yeah, it's just like it's stuck in on itself. I am very similar with you. I really like The Force Awakens. There is very few theater experiences I think that I've had as memorable as that final like sequence in the snow where like Finn gets a lightsaber and like is like pretty like convincingly beaten. Like, but it's that moment of
like Kylo Ren slapping his wound to hype himself up is and like this is the only Star Wars movie where there's blood as far as I'm aware.
The Force Awakens,
like that, like actually like Kylo Ren's wound drips blood. The soldier at the start like has a bloody hand over Finn's mask. Like there's good stuff in The Force Awakens.
There is good stuff, and there's even like good uses. Like I could talk about The Force Awakens endlessly. There's good attempts at like humor in it when he's like destroying that room, and like the two people walk in and they like the sort of two, and they like it's funny. It's like, but I cannot express the excitement I had like leaving The Force Awakens. I'm like, Kylo Ren is fucking really cool. Like, who is this Adam Driver guy? Like, all these characters are interesting. Finn's story of being a former stormtrooper. It's like there's these things and elements set up, and
and the acting just has so much energy to it.
It does
as well.
These characters, and John Boyega has very clearly been on record, being like, these movies suck. Like, he is not a fan. He's like, they're like, will you ever come back? And he's like, fuck no.
Yeah, so you're not going to Disney Plus me or something.
Yeah, he's like, there's absolutely no way. He is rightfully so probably pissed off about the way they took his story because there is a lot of potential and interest. I will still stand by the fact that he should have been in some capacity, probably like force sensitive, should have been like, they should have done something with that. But that is a first movie. And I know the internet for some reason is not the biggest fan of J.J. Abrams. I don't care. I don't have an emotional attachment to Star Trek. I like those two movies.
Yes.
I like the stuff.
Probably
he does.
We like them because we're not emotionally attached to
exactly.
Star Trek.
Yeah, we have no ties to it, and we watch these. We're like, this is fun. He knows how to make a kinetic, fast-paced, exciting visually, and I would even say like narrative movie. They might not be the best upon like deep analysis, but if you're looking for like service level, really well-made blockbuster movies, it's hard to beat J.J. Abrams as a director, in my opinion.
And even just like going back to like that fight in the snow, like rewatching the Force Awakens, like I got giddy again when Kylo's calling the sword over, and then it goes by him and it goes into Rey's hand and goes the like the classic Star Wars theme.
Yeah,
and it's like it hits you, and that's talent. Like you can say what you want about J.J. Abrams as a writer, as a director, especially with the kind of genre that he works in. Who's better? Like who's better working today?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really interesting. And it's really interesting to look back on a retrospect because we watched like, I don't want to compare two major properties, but you kind of have to in like the discourse of film. But like when we saw left like Avengers Infinity War and all the fucking people get dusted, you're like, they're going to come back somehow. Like some of them are probably going to die, but most of them are going to come back. You can't because like they're making a Spider-Man movie and they're making a Black Panther movie. The feeling of leaving The Force Awakens and going, all right, we're having the next one in 2017. We don't know what's going to happen. like it's just like these years of like theories and speculations.
Yeah, I remember
and
waiting
ideas.
for like you had to wait 2 years for between
Yeah,
episodes. I mean, you had Rogue One in between, you had Solo,
yeah,
Star Wars story, but I mean, like the main sequel trilogy, you
yeah,
had to wait 2 years and like speculate. And you're like, when the Force Awakens ends and it's Luke on the mountain in
yeah.
Ireland, and he's like, you're like, what's gonna happen
Yeah.
next?
It
You
does
had to
that
wait
like
2 years for
drone.
it.
Yeah, yeah, it like steps back and it does the drone shot, and you're like, oh my fucking god. And the
And
feeling
even
of
the score, like there's like a little like uncertain note at the end. Like it's
yeah,
kind of like it's the main theme's playing, but like there's like little like uncertain, like it kind of like gets a little like stressed out right at
yeah,
the end, and you're like it's like a little ominous. You're like, what? And then it cuts, and then
yeah.
that's the end.
And you're sitting there in the
Um,
theater and you're like, oh my god, I gotta
yes,
wait 2 years for this. And then you leave
yeah,
The Last Jedi and you're like, I don't give a like, I don't care. Like none
yeah.
none of it. So okay, so The Force Awakens, I'm gonna be out of the three movies that have come out, it is arguably my favorite. I don't even really think it's close, to be honest. I think Rise of Skywalker is like a bad movie. I know
The
you're a
only thing
little
that I think comes close is Andor, but like that's a TV show.
yeah, that's a TV show. I mean, I
Yeah.
like Rogue One. I think Rogue One's a good movie.
Mm.
I don't think you agree.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it so I can't really
Yeah.
speak. I saw it 3 times in theaters though.
Did you
So
really? Did you actually?
yes,
God damn. Did we see it together?
we saw it my second viewing.
We saw it second viewing.
Yeah,
Okay. So it's pretty like, I'm not gonna lie, I did not rewatch The Force Awakens for The Last Jedi. And it was like legit. Okay, so it was legitimately jarring to like step into the movie. And one thing I kind of, you could immediately tell that Ryan Johnson's impact on The Last Jedi already felt is he looked at the Star Wars movie and he went, every single one of these fucking movies is like, every movie ends with like the largest scale threat possible. And he's like, where do you go after the last base for the bad guys was a literal planet that could destroy other planets? And he
yeah,
went, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a chase movie. And this entire movie is going to be a chase movie. And it's going to end extremely small scale. There is one moment of large scale action, which we will talk about later, as being really fucking cool. It was cool in
yeah.
theaters and it was cool now seeing it. I rewound it like I like I just it's the fucking like light speed thing. It was literally like all of us sitting next to me watching like the conversation, like the Francis Ford Coppola movie, like actual like art. And I was like, look,
No, this is art.
I was like, pause it. And she's like, what? And I'm like, look at it. She's like, yeah, it's cool.
You slam the laptop down. You're
Yeah.
like, watch this.
You watch this. And I rewatched like I've seen it. I'm like, no, rewatch it again. No, it's like this stuff's really cool, but he eventually just like starts the movie and he's like, it's going to be a small scale, like 3 ships against a bunch of different ships, small scale chase movie. Everything is framed around that. It's an interesting movie, but you are clearly a lot higher in it than I am, and I'm very curious to see. So you watch The Last Jedi, Matt, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, I don't remember it. I don't like it as much in theaters. You're
I
watching
was
it.
dreading rewatching it, to be honest. I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Remember when I came on, we came on like Discord and we were talking, and I'm like, I made it an hour in, I got an hour and a half left, and you were just like, fuck.
Yeah.
What did you think about it? What was your viewing experience like? Tell me about your Last Jedi experience.
So it immediately makes a bad impression with the stupid interaction between
yes.
Poe Dameron and Domhnall Gleeson's character, whose name I can't think of right now. And it's like
General
Domhnall
Hux.
is going what?
His name is Hux.
Hux, yeah.
Hux.
And Domhnall is going full like cartoon villain,
which I love, by the way.
I didn't like it. Did not work for me. He's in a show called like something. It's like his name's like Jacob Ireland, where it's like him and his brother are like the stars of it. And at one point, Brendan Gleeson shows up. It's a really stupid show, but he's funny in that.
Okay.
Here, he's just like, I just think he's overacting, and it's like this is like the first real like Disney trying to be like funny.
Okay.
And it's blockbusters, and you know, Oscar Isaac going like, I'm holding for Hux. It's like completely desaturates any sort of tension the scene could have of one X-Wing going up against the whole fleet. There's no tension because he's not taking it seriously. So you don't take it seriously. However, the actual space battle, even though like militarily speaking, it makes absolutely no sense what's going on.
Yeah.
It's still really engaging.
It is.
Like for example, like I forgot how good of a director Ryan Johnson is, because when like the bombers are going over and there's that one tense scene where like the lady's trying to kick the thing to fall over. It's like and it's like paralleling different like other fight scenes going on in the opening space battle. It's really good. Like the slow buildup, you know, I knew it was going to happen. Like I was still kind of like, I felt my heart rate going up because it's really drawn out and teased out. And I think it's really good. and like like visual effects in this movie are just pretty incredible,
Yeah.
especially in its space battles.
Yeah.
So even though that first joke did not hit well for me, I think that the space battle as a whole I thought was really impactful. And even though like Ryan Johnson's more known for doing smaller scale stuff, he does have like an energy with action scenes as well. He knows
Yeah.
how to do them, and I think he knows how to do them well. But what really stuck out to me on this rewatch is being like the best. I think that's what we want to get to, like
Yeah, I'm curious to
what
see
I
what.
really enjoyed about
Yeah,
this
I'm
movie.
curious.
And that is everything with Rey and Luke, and with
I
Kylo Ren
like.
kind of
Yeah.
serving as a rogue. It's it's gonna be completely hyperbole. It reminded me of Banshees of Inisherin or like a Mark McDonagh stage play because
Okay.
it's like out west in Ireland.
Yep.
I've literally seen this isle that's filmed at.
Yep.
I was gonna
Have
go
you?
on it, but the water was too rough, so we couldn't land. But
Oh,
like I
really?
was
Okay.
literally I took a boat out there, so I know I've been to like the out west there, and it feels like a stage play, like where like it's like these two characters in this drama where it's all like in one location, not including the stupid scene in the start where Luke's like walking around, he's drinking the green milk, and like when he gets lightsaber goes, what is this? And he throws it. Once they get over all that Ryan Johnson crap and they just actually start talking about and debating like the morality of resurrecting the Jedi,
Hmm.
what's most compelling is that both sides make good points. Like Rey's the hopeful optimist and Luke is like the old cynic. And I
Yeah.
know like Mark Hamill said that he disagrees with Ryan Johnson's take on the character. I think everything up to like the last 30 minutes of Luke's arc here is like great. I think him being borderline nihilistic after having seen him in Return of the Jedi is like the chosen one here fulfilling his destiny. I like there's
Yeah.
so much missed, and you're like, how did this come to be? Like, how did
Yeah.
one thing go to the opposite extreme? Like that is compelling to me. And yeah, hearing them debate like where Luke is like, the Jedi were the reason why Darth Sidious became powerful. So it's like bringing the prequels into the sequel trilogy as well, making them relevant towards it. And they both make really great points. And then like Adam Driver as Kylo Ren is like this like Iago-esque figure, like
Yeah.
just sowing seeds of doubt in Rey, like in their weird like force communication things
Yeah.
where like they both have like different interpretations. Where like when Luke's blatantly lying to Rey about like why him and Kylo had the falling out, where it's like I stood over him and then when he woke up and was sorrowed by me and then
Yeah.
like caused like you could see in Mark Hamill's performance that he's clearly holding the truth back
Yeah.
in
It's
that in
Rashomon
that
style of like
yeah,
multiple
in
different
that
narratives.
scene.
Yeah.
And then Adam Driver later on, when he recounts the events, it's like he comes in with the lightsaber already drawn and
Yep.
ready
The
to
facial
attack.
expression's different. Like he
And then like
looks
the
at.
actual
Yeah.
truth of it is somewhere in the middle where he has the lightsaber in his hand and he's conflicted.
Yep.
And you don't really, and like the truth of it, you never really know if he's actually gonna kill Adam Driver or not had he not
Yep.
woken up. But again, it's like stage play esque where it's all dialogue driven. It's like what we talked about with the finale of Loki, where it's just conversations that are compelling. And yeah, the Rashomon style of like you don't really know who's telling the truth, and you're kind of with Rey here because both sides have a reason to manipulate her. And I just love the way it's the truth is slowly drawn out,
Yeah.
and it's all again in the secluded locations. They're forced to be with each other. And I just love Adam Driver's performance, like where he's kind of like he's showing a nicer side of himself,
Yeah.
but you still get that little like eeriness where you don't quite get. Again, he's the Iago figure
Yep.
where he has motivations outside of what he's showing to Rey. All that stuff I thought was so good. And like I'm like sitting there at one point, like towards the end, I'm like, this might be better than The Force Awakens, just like from these scenes alone. And
Whoa,
it
interesting.
made Cantabite, like it made me forget Cantabite, which is how good these scenes are.
That's exactly the area I wanted to talk about. Is like
Okay.
I was like I wrote a long fucking diatribe on Letterboxd, but in that I'm like there's a movie with a lot of great ideas that don't really go anywhere, but there is like a solid 40 minutes of this movie that I think is genuinely great, and it's everything post Cantabite until
Yeah.
they get on the salt mine like planet.
And
Where
even when Luke is like going to burn the books,
Yeah.
and you get that little like you see Yoda's ear
yeah,
like poke out. I was like, that's so good. Like that
Yeah.
was really good.
this the thing is like there's a lot I think to respect in this movie. I think because Ryan Johnson is clearly looking at going like it's pretty like I view Star Wars as pretty boring because to me Star Wars is like it's good guys versus bad guys. There's usually not a lot of like moral gray. I know there's probably people who are like, oh, in the larger like extended universe canon, there's people who are great. I'm going purely off of like the mainstream stuff. It's bad guys are bad, good guys are good, and then the prequel trilogy is a good guy turning bad. Like I get it. it's really compelling to examine like who creates the mythos, the mythology, what these like legendary figures are, what makes them tick, and like almost like because in like the first movie, it's like Luke Skywalker's a legend, like it's not even real, like who is he? And then you get the second movie where he's a morally conflicted person who has done great things and also had a massive crisis of faith, because I mean the Force is religion, it's all analogous for like some kind of religious aspect of it. And he had a loss of faith, he had a crisis of faith, and being able to like examine what makes a legend and the fall from grace and the eventual like redemption kind of like is inherently more interesting than Ray going, you get a training montage, and then he comes in and you get this whole like it's like another good guy added. It makes it a great conflict, and it does make it interesting because you have like a character like Ray who is defined by past trauma, by lies and hidden mysteries and stuff like that, who is then being lied by this legend. And you do have the dynamic with Kylo, who is also someone marred by trauma and conflict and trying to unify them, and they're more together, more like similar than you would think. And it makes for like genuinely interesting narrative filmmaking and storytelling, which is why it sucks when it all like doesn't matter in the end. And it's like in the moment, it's like it did make me forget like that stupid fucking Canto Bite scene and like anything to do with
Yeah,
it.
and I think that was an interesting conversation. Like again, we could talk about Canto Bite, but
It's bad. It's like
everyone knows it's
yeah,
bad.
it's bad.
It's
It's
like
not good.
like it sets up these interesting thoughts of like, oh, like weapons, like billionaires making money off of selling weapons, and then
Yeah.
portrays them in the most comical way possible. So there's absolutely no tension.
Yeah,
And there's
like
bad child acting, and there's bad CGI,
yeah.
and the plot makes no sense. And
And
Rose and Finn have absolutely zero chemistry at all.
Yeah.
And
Completely stops the narrative, completely stops like any narrative thrust. It like even further
Finn
cements.
says like the ship's running on fumes, and yet they can go on this huge adventure.
Yeah, I don't.
Nothing like it's like whatever. But again, the interesting aspect of the film is like, yes, this teasing of merging light and dark.
Yes.
And that sort of culminates in the Snoke final confrontation scene, which is both great and ultimately where the movie turns to its most disappointing, because it's so it's so fascinating watching Rey and Kylo team up and work together to defeat Snoke's enemies. But like again, the scene where he's like, take the lightsaber, turn it against your enemy.
True enemy.
It's like,
and it's like, okay. It's like
it's written in a way where it's like so clearly like it's written in a way like no one says that. Even for Star Wars, it's bad dialogue. And doesn't make any sense. But the conundrum of like, what happens if we just merge light and dark? Like these sides,
just do away with it completely.
Yeah, like light is just as capable as causing evil as dark. Let's get rid of this war and just see what happens. And you're like, oh my god, this is such an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And then by the movie's end, it's back to being clear good guys, clear bad guys. It's like Rey goes through such an interesting character arc in this movie, and by the end, she's just back to being with the good guys, going like, I'm the hero. And it's like, and then conversely, Kylo Ren is just the pure evil bad guy. He's now the Grand Inspector, and
Grand Inspector,
and it's like
Supreme Leader,
and
Grand Inspector,
and it's like you had something, Rian Johnson. You had something so good, and it was all being built up with Rey being influenced by Luke Skywalker's disillusionment and all this stuff, and like she has like a legitimate bond with Kylo even though they're on opposite sides. It was so good. It could have been interesting to lead into, and like even if in episode 9 she goes back and realizes the dark side is actually bad and Kylo is just manipulating her, fine. But it's like, leave episode 8 on this note, this cliffhanger of like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen if we just cast aside this idea of light and dark? Like, would the universe be a better place?
This is the thing, is like, this is where I am absolutely curious to know about like studio interference. Did Disney because like the biggest victims of any level of studio interference are going to be the Finn and Poe characters, which we'll talk about as they're like genuinely not good in this movie. The storylines of people
like, and BB-8 stuff is Looney Tunes.
It's embarrassing. Like there's
cringe.
Genuinely amateur-ish writing, but like that's what I want to know is like there is clear establishment of the breaking away of what Star Wars is. It is such an emphasis, even from the beginning of the narrative thrust of the movie, with it being a chase movie instead of a race against the clock. I mean, it's still kind of a race against the clock, but it's a different kind. It's much smaller scale, and you have these characters who, because in all the previous movies you've had of Star Wars, the light, the Jedi, and the Sith are polar opposites. They don't merge. They don't talk. They're good guys and bad guys. But having these two characters slowly build a connection is just genuinely interesting in this universe, but also just like creative storytelling from the limitations that have been set upon this world and the expectations with
Especially
it.
because Kylo's battling against the light and Rey's battling against the dark too. Like you don't know who's being influenced by what, and none of it's explained. And it feels like I think, is it Lawrence Kasdan who wrote Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back? I think that's what his name is. And he also wrote The Force Awakens. Like he came in and wrote all like the Ireland and like Snoke scenes. I mean, like all the scenes between Rey, Luke, and Kylo. And then like someone else wrote the whole rest of the other movie, including the last 35 minutes.
Yeah.
It's shocking how nuanced all that relationship building is, and how many like different angles you can look at it, like what and how like very little is explained to you. And then you get to the last scene, I mean the last showdown, and it's like it's Leia by a transistor radio going like, no one's responding to us, and it goes, that means no one's coming and they don't care. And then someone takes the snow and goes, salt. This is salt on the ground, just in case you weren't aware. It's like everything is being explained to you in such micro unnecessary detail. It's like awful. I don't understand.
This is why where I'm like, I watch this movie and I'm like, I can see a potential, but to me it's more, I wrote this like I think like verbatim on my Letterboxd review, but it's like this movie feels like a perversion, like a perverting of art for like capitalistic profit. Like anything from like the final sequence when Chewbacca is like in the Millennium Falcon, you have those stupid little fucking animals that are in 3 different shots of like reaction shots where it falls or it screams and then it screams again. And you're like, at a certain point, like by the third one, I'm like, God damn, man. Or like the fact that like BB-8 as like a entity, because it's not a character, I guess, is
it's a thing. I mean, everything is there to sell toys, but like that BB-8 that was specifically,
but it's like there you have these like Star Wars is always, this is gonna sound a little harsh, but it's a property aimed at younger people. It's teenagers and younger, and you can feel this hyperbolic, yes, but like attempt at mature storytelling, more mature storytelling.
I would say it is mature. I would say everything that's on Ireland is mature.
But it's bristling with it's more mature storytelling in a movie that is seemingly like pushing it down and forcing it to reject it, because there is nothing more jarring than going from a character, and I don't want to like Canobite. I'm gonna use that as a analogous for the Finn storyline. I'll just use that. But anything with like Finn, which is genuinely childish and like amateurish storytelling, a complete butchering of my favorite character from the first movie. That's why I'm so fucking pissed off. He was my favorite character. He had the most interesting story potential. To then just be like, to have that and then an immediate. So this is when you're like, you said earlier that the structure of the movie, balancing multiple different storylines, was like good. I thought it was awful. I thought the pacing of the different storylines was not very well balanced.
I'm talking more about like climactic scenes all lining up at the same time, but I
can see that, but like when it's like at least like before everything up to Canobite, when it's like, oh shit, we haven't had Finn and Rose, and then you have a 20-minute sequence of them there.
You're like, let's just get back to the good stuff.
Yeah, you're like, and then you get back, and then you're just like, oh, but then you have it's like you can feel the movie at times being like, oh shit, we forgot about this character, and then you go back to it, and then you go back to the other, and it's just like, I don't think it's structured very well, and I have more complaints. But what did you think about this?
I think so. There's like some like Finn's character arc is really good, and The Force Awakens, and like teasing the romance between him and Rey, and like him coming to like terms with the fact that he did bad things as a stormtrooper but wanting to redeem himself. And then here, like the first scene, he's coming up with that stupid like water balloon over him,
Yeah.
and it's
It
like
gives
it's
you a nice
squirting everywhere,
interaction.
and he's like, "Where am I going?"
Yeah.
And he's a little jokey. I would say if you're watching Force Awakens, he's a little too jokey at times, where he's like, "I'm with the Resistance, yes, yes, I'm with the Resistance," and it's
Yeah.
like things like that, a little over the top at times. Uh, but I mean, he always handles the emotional moments really well. The problem is there is one emotional moment for him in this whole movie, that being The Last Jedi, and it is, first of all, it comes out of nowhere. Like,
Yeah.
I'm conflicted about him sacrificing himself at the end of The Last Jedi, because on one hand, I think it's a really emotional moment that is completely ruined by Rose, and it's not her fault because she's a woman. It's a fault of the character and Ryan Johnson's writing.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll talk about, we have to talk, we're gonna have to
yeah,
talk about the
we're gonna
online
talk about the
discourse after.
grifters and about Rose and
Yeah, we'll
everything.
have to after, yeah.
It's like it's so weirdly shocked. You see her go all the way back, and you're like, okay, so it's like it's so well built up. Like, this is this emotional moment, and then like she just comes out of nowhere, and she goes, "We're not gonna win by killing our enemies. We're gonna win by
There's a
by
fucking
love."
giant
As a
laser.
laser explodes and murders 100 people.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like one of those things I wish somebody like took a step back and went, this is stupid. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
how
it's
does
like, was
it
there any
pass?
editor that like thought like, hey, maybe this isn't a good? That's
Yeah.
why I don't think there's a committee. I think Ryan Johnson did this on his own for the most part, is
Yeah.
because they're just some like just mind-boggling decisions.
It's such an easy fix. You know what you do? You have him go to sacrifice himself. The thing gets destroyed by some miracle, and in the
Maybe Rose
explosion,
destroys it or
she
something.
does
Like shoots it.
something.
Yeah,
Something happens, but then in that explosion, the same exact, his thing goes flying off to the side. She comes up and she's like, "We won't win by set. We need." And then you have that moment, and all of a
yeah.
sudden, you have a character who is willing to sacrifice. You have a character who's like, you just don't like, because it's the same thing with like Aquaman. When they're like making out at the end battle, and it's just like,
It's like a Holocaust is going on in the background.
it's just everybody's exploding and dying, and you're just like, it's like really interesting, like a choice, because it's like they're kissing an Aquaman, and then you just see like ships with hundreds of people explode, and you're like, you're like, I'm getting odd feelings from this. It was the same thing, but the movie places more emphasis on like, we got like 40 people left, we're fucked. Like, and was like, we won't win by surviving. It's like the last 40 people.
I just wish someone like screamed like, "Ah, my
Yeah,
like
I'm dying. Like,
yeah," or something like that.
yeah,
But I mean, going back to
my
like what
family.
I was to Finn's arc, it's like, but on the other side, there's nothing building up to him making a sacrifice at the same time.
Yeah.
So like, again, it's like plasma. I mean, Captain Phasma comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, why wasn't Finn's arc him dealing with Captain Phasma? Like, she's questioning his loyalty to the rebellion, that he
Yeah.
sacrifices himself at the end to prove his loyalty to the rebellion or something. It's
Dude,
so
it's
easy.
so bad. Okay, so this is the word. This is the thing, is like, I think the character Finn in The Force Awakens had the potential to be the most interesting character. For a large portion of The Force Awakens, he is the lead of the movie. He is like, he is tertiary.
He has all the conflict. He is interacting with most of the main characters, and
there's a lot of like, I don't know Star Wars lore. I'm going to be completely honest, but there was a real potential, at least in the first movie, for him to be like a stormtrooper who's humanized, who has changed sides. But then my issue with that always in the movie is he is then immediately just murdering other stormtroopers. Like, the moment,
with
yeah,
zero like moral
and I don't
apprehension.
know if that's a thing in like the movie. They're like mindless robots, and he's just like the one that got away. But like, they don't establish it. So for an audience member, you like, oh, a stormtrooper can be human. These are real people. And then he's just like, but the moment when he like does the lightsaber for the first time, fucking awesome, great movie moment. But then you have that potential of him potentially like wielding a lightsaber. Like, who could he be? Like, what is this? Butchered, completely butchered. Everything about his storyline is absolutely butchered. He is turned into a comedic relief side character. He has maybe some of the most generic lines of dialogue I've seen in a major blockbuster in a long time. I don't the treatment of the actress who played Rose is like legitimately abhorrent. Like criminally, like malicious behavior, but they have no chemistry, like you said. The arc is completely shoehorned in, and it just like, it kind of just falters, and then the movie kind of ends, and you're like, what the fuck are they gonna do with that character now?
Yeah, because like they had Phasma. It's like, have him. The whole arc is him questioning his loyalty. It's like, have just her question his loyalty to the Resistance, and like be like this like adversary constantly antagonizing him throughout the movie, and then he makes sacrifice at the end, or he's about to make the sacrifice, and then Rose blows up the cannon or something. It's like, it was just, the cannon has nothing to do with anything that happens to
with
him by the
Finn.
end of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah,
And
it's stupid. And it's like you have like my favorite thing ever is like the Gwendolyn Christie interview for the first movie where they're
oh, it's
like,
like, yeah,
what do you think about this? She's like, oh, all this stuff. And she's like not in the movie. And you can tell she's like, I'm not in this fucking movie at
yeah.
all. And there is just like it's a story where it feels like the movie is like it doesn't like the previous. I've just never experienced a movie like this where you can feel the rejection of the previous movie so like so clearly, where it's like you're watching it because like a big mystery of the first movie is like who's Ray's parents, and they're just like they're fucking nobody. Like it's like such like a weird spiteful moment, and a lot of this is like it's Ryan Johnson attempting to deconstruct, but it doesn't come across like it does in his other movies because he's not making a standalone genre film. He's making a movie on a beloved franchise, regardless of my opinions on it, with a movie that had established stuff. And it feels like it's like it was angry and it was like spiteful against the previous movie. It feels that way with the characters. It feels that way with the weird humor. And I don't want to be the nitpick fucking person, but it's like it's just a weird movie. It's an odd
it just
experience.
makes you wonder like who wrote the Rey, Luke, and Kylo
Yeah.
stuff, because it's so much different
It's so
from
good.
everything else. And then like I guess we talk about Poe as well, or he's like in this Kafka-esque nightmare where no one's telling him anything.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, of course I'm going to resist because nothing you're saying makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then it turns out again, like, oh, you were wrong this whole time because we purposely didn't tell you any information
Yeah, it's like that
about
cool.
our plans.
Imagine that was like my first note I wrote about this movie, and I was like, it's crazy that Oscar Isaac is like in these movies. Like Oscar Isaac is one of the most talented actors we have like working today, and it's just like you look at it and you're like, what did they do with him? Like he doesn't do anything, and it's like his character is he goes from hotshot guy to hotshot guy who's a little bit more mature. Like that's his
No,
arc.
I saw Redler Media in the review said the lesson he learned was to blindly follow authority.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah,
Which is accurate. Like that's not wrong.
No, it's like, oh, you should have trusted us in the first place. It's
Even
like
though we literally set you up to fail.
that's what I don't like. I have like a lot of like I don't want to be a nitpicking lore person, but I have a lot of questions about like the lore establishing of this universe. One, when he takes over like the ship, it's like 6 people out of like it's like he turns around, he's like, I'm relieving you of command. It's like 6 people with guns, and you see people like working in the background, and you're like, what if just like everybody turns around? They're like, hey, they're pointing a gun at the leader, like kill him. Like there's like logistic in-world. I have a question for you because you like Star Wars more and you know probably a little bit more than I do. I don't really understand the world of Star Wars. Why do people join or like support the bad guys when they're not even like morally gray to the mass? Is it just like fear? It's like, oh, they're gonna kill us. But like, if
Well, I
enough,
mean, and I think in the original trilogy it makes sense because it's like they're just space Nazis, and as long as as long as you do what you're told, they're gonna be okay with what you do. So that's what I gather from it.
okay,
But like here, it's like Return of the Jedi ends with the Republic destroying the Empire, and yet by the Last Jedi, it's like the First Order has complete control over the galaxy. But you don't know how, because well, they call the good guys the Resistance in this movie. But it's like what was the government that was in charge before the First Order took over, and also how did
how
the
did it
First
get
Order
back?
take over as soundly as you know? What did they like? They had like this amazing like conquest where they just destroyed everything that the Republic set up. It doesn't make any sense. Because they want rebels versus Empire, and but they just change the names a little bit, and it's
But
like, but it doesn't make any real world sense because the Republic has control over the galaxy now. It's like, how did the First Order? It'd be one thing if like they showed like this like it's like small fascist group like do some huge plot to take over the Republic or something, but you have no idea. Like there's no like, I mean, I guess to the prequels credits, you have the bureaucracy going on in
Yeah.
Coruscant that makes things make sense as to how the Sith took over. And
Yeah.
like here, you have no idea how the First Order became a supreme power, even though like they feel like a small insurgent group of fascists.
This is the exact thing that is like, it's not like the movie is set like 150 years, like where there's a real time difference. It's like 20 something years past the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
It's like they know, like there are heroes, like there are like Luke Skywalker is like the world establishing lore doesn't make any sense to me. And it really, like, it shows for me more in this movie. And I know by like the end of the third movie, it's like everybody comes and it's like a bajillion people. And it's like, where were those fucking people like the first time? And it's like, it's weird. Like they don't establish enough of like these movies are so concerned with the scaled down conflict of like Jedis, bad guys versus good guys, that they don't take the time to establish like the logistics of the world. Is stuff that would, I think, greatly benefit a lot of like the long-term storytelling of these type of movies. Because at a certain point, I'm like watching this, I'm like, your like entire ship was just basically like nuked. Like, why are you there's questions of like, are you like that? Like, are there not more people like Finn where you're like executing random people and you're like, all right, like that's cool. Like it's just like questionable stuff. Like they don't establish like it's a fear or it's a threat or there's such an overwhelming superpower. And this could be my media illiteracy struggling with the concept of it because I'm not super versed in Star Wars. But to me, it's always like a very scarce world, which is why it makes it interesting that Rian Johnson is also like, anybody could have the Force. Like he has this cool idea, anybody could have it. It could be this random kid, and it like starts to open up a little bit, like the world. You're like, who's that fucking kid? It's like
With Rian Johnson's aborted trilogy that he's
gone, and like Taika Waititi's movies gone, and all these movies are gone because nobody can fucking figure out, and because I think they look at these movies and go, these things are boring. I think, or they just look at, they're like, we don't have a larger story to tell. Like we've boxed ourselves into a window. You said though you really like the last. Is it just the Rey, Kylo, Luke stuff? What else like stood out to you on a better kind of rewatch?
I just want to talk a bit about like that the last climax scene where like not the battle on not Hoth, but like before that, where so like the scenes are set up where it's Laura Dern is gonna hyperdrive the ship into the other ships, and at the same time, like Kylo Ren's fighting and Rey are fighting for the lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber, and then also with that is Finn fighting Captain Phasma. Like I feel like that scene with like all the three different climaxes all built up at the same time was like pretty masterful because it builds up and then it goes quiet. Like because you think like when everything builds up, it's gonna be a big explosion, but it's just quiet, and then it shows the ship flying through the other ships and stuff like that.
That was a
just
cool
more of
moment.
like me being impressed by Rian Johnson's ability to direct, I think, more than anything. And like it's not necessarily that I liked anything else outside of like the Rey, Kylo, and Luke stuff. It's just that stuff was so good that at one point around 2/3 through, like I was so emotionally gripped into the movie, and I caught myself. I'm like, whoa, what? Like I'm really into this right now.
Yeah.
And so that stuff I just thought was so good that it made up for everything else. And then by like the movie's end, none of it mattered. So it just left a bad taste in my mouth too at the same time.
That whole like light speed sequence, by the way, I think is really cool. It was actually pretty awesome when we went and saw it. When I saw it in theaters, my Regal theater in Massachusetts, when you were going to, because this was before like they got rid of my box office. Like you go to a person, you're like, I want one ticket, and you do everything online. But like when you went to the box office, they literally had a little like paper being like, hey, heads up for Star Wars The Last Jedi. There's a sequence 2 hours into the movie where there's no sound and it's meant to be no sound. Like they actively gave people a warning because I think people were like, something must have broken, which I think is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And as evidenced by me pestering Olive, who was watching like actual art. I'm like, look at it. It's really cool. It's a really cool like
the ship hit the other ships.
And then you can just look at the nitpick and you're like, wow, I went through light speed, and coincidentally everybody who is a good
but like,
person,
who cares? Like
who
it's a
gives
cool
a
scene.
shit? Yeah, I don't give a fuck about that. My whole thing is like the Benicio del Toro stuff is actually kind of interesting.
I hated it. I love Benicio del Toro. I hated it.
It's just like you're just like, I like seeing different sides where he's just like, good guys, bad guys, doesn't fucking matter. He's like, everybody's in it for like profit, and you're like, okay. But then that goes in hand with like the mild imperialism commentary on Canto Bight, where you're like, it's these half-baked ideas in a story that
Look
like
how wacky and silly all these war profiteers are.
yeah, you're like, oh, they're selling to the good guys and bad guys, and you're like, yeah, but like, hey man, you're selling to the. It's not like both guys. It's like one are Nazis and one aren't. It's like it feels like it's okay to sell to the good guys a little bit. Like I get the commentary, but like if it was like, look, these people made it rich selling to the empire, it's like, oh, they're bad people. But it's like, look, they sell to both. It's like, yeah, but one wants genocide and the other doesn't want genocide. I think I'd root for the other side.
I was just
Like,
more upset just by how like goofy all the billionaires are.
yeah,
Like they're just not serious, or there's nothing sinister about them. And
yeah,
they trash a casino, and it's like, we did a good job today. We showed them. It's like they're
yeah.
gonna rebuild by tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's
they're
not,
just
it's
rich.
not
They're gonna take
matter.
their
They're gonna
billions
round up
of
all those animals because they can't
yeah,
go anywhere. It's still on the planet.
yeah. They're gonna find
I
them
mean, like
again.
again,
And
like it's for kids. That
yeah, this is the kid.
so
This is the aspect of it's like you can feel the attempts at more mature filmmaking bristling against the Star Wars Disney property, and it makes like a really disconnected, disjointed movie that again, like we've talked about endlessly, but like it's just butchers any kind of semblance of interesting story, long-term storytelling from The Force Awakens. Because you're right,
mm,
the movie it ends with like nothing. There's that really interesting idea. They're like, could we join? And then it ends in a fucking explosion, and then it ends on a fight, and everybody's evil and everybody's good. And then Luke Skywalker dies, and you're like, what was the point of all of this? And it
yeah,
leaves you with like, what was I just spent 155 minutes through this, and you're like, I left with nothing, really. Like nothing.
yeah. I have nothing really to say about like the actual like end of the movie, except that I just think Luke dying at the end is stupid.
It's
Um,
yeah, he's like he exerted himself so
it
much
just
to give
feels
him with the
it just feels
force.
so underdeveloped and just out of nowhere. Um, and the movie just ends on such a sour note because like there's so much interesting progress and character evolution that ultimately feels like, and like even like the last shot,
Yeah.
like when they're all like it doesn't even feel like it's like a last shot, like they're all like sitting in their ship together as a family.
Yeah.
It's about family, that's what matters.
Yeah.
And like it like again like the last shot of last sequence of The Force Awakens, where like Luke turns and he's like all his mystery, and Rey has a
Yeah.
lightsaber out like this, and it's like searing to my mind, and like here
Yeah.
I'm like, you're sitting there and like all of a sudden the credits roll, you're like, what?
Yeah. You're like, oh my God. You're like, no, fuck.
And then yeah, I mean, like that's all I really have to say about the movie. It's like what everyone else has said to a certain extent. It's just that, I mean, I think we talk about it a little more nuanced than certain communities of people will talk about
Which
the
we'll
movie.
yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Um,
Yeah.
but like the good is so good that it almost redeemed the bad. And I feel like if the movie just cut like on a cliffhanger with Rey tentatively joining Kylo, I think the movie would be much better remembered.
Yeah. That was
At
a
least for
pretty
me.
yeah, that was pretty like I forgot that when they don't like join, I'm like I hit pause and I had like 40 minutes left of the movie and I was like, are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
was like, whoa.
It's
I was
like,
like,
what is going
yeah, it was like that feeling where it's like I remember the movie, but it definitely like I hit pause and it's like I got a whole ass other like 30 minutes left of this, 30, 35 minutes. And you're just like, okay. You're like, sure, anything else can't be that. It's just like just real quick, because we have to actually talk about why we chose this for modern classics, because it
yeah.
does we
This
have
is already going over an hour.
yeah, we have to talk about this. If you're to rank the new trilogy from your remembrance, what do you have?
So Force Awakens is number one.
Yes,
I
so too.
rewatched Rise of Skywalker last year, and I liked it a lot more on a rewatch. I think it made more sense to me.
Okay.
Um, I think the movie is better watching it at home, where you can take breaks.
Like breathe.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can like step back and just be like. So I saw it in theaters. I like walked out and just like went to the bathroom. It took a really long time coming back because like it was just too much sound. I was like, what's going on in my brain?
Yeah.
Um, it's tough to like decide between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker right now.
Yeah.
I will tentatively say Rise of Skywalker number two, just because I think it has, just because like Last Jedi just has such a bummer ending with what it
I
sets up.
know.
Like Last Jedi has like higher highs than Rise of Skywalker, but like it's more of a letdown when you get to the end of it, because you just
Yeah.
know that like all this interesting stuff they set up just
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So like I'll tentatively put Last Jedi at the bottom of the list, while also with the asterisk that the Luke, Rey, Kylo stuff in Last Jedi is like peak of
Mm.
the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say I'm probably in a similar boat. Force Awakens is like clearly number one. I don't think it's even close, but it's like what's 2 and 3, and you basically have to argue: do you value a higher peak but lower lows of like an attempt at something interesting, but kind of like an utter failure, or like peak modern blockbuster? But I mean peak as in what they try to do, and it's not good. So do you prefer
Yeah.
like noise? Or do you prefer like a failure of like what they're going for? And it's ultimately like I've only seen Rise of Skywalker once. It was like I am someone who like I'm like a noise person. Like I exist loudly. I like loud shit. I watch loud movies. And Rise of Skywalker was overwhelming for me to the point where you're like fucking I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna put The Last Jedi at 2, Rise of Skywalker 1, because I was like, it's Rise of Skywalker. I don't think is a very good movie. I think it's pretty bad. But at least The Last Jedi is like an attempt. There's like something like I like Rian Johnson. I like him as a person. I like him as a filmmaker. He seems like a good guy. Probably do that. But Matt, we do have to talk about why the fuck we chose this one for this movie coming off. We chose Iron Man. I think we made that pretty clear last episode because it was the starting point for the modern major franchise, the franchise that has shaped movies. But a major part of film going is not just the movies themselves, but discourse around them. There was, and we politics are tough, but I think in this case it's not that
I
tough to
think we
talk about.
represent a good amount of diversity
Yeah, I think
between
so too.
us.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. We got a lot of diverse. I'm like a lot of European. You are too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're Irish. I kind of
Yes.
am too. We got something going on, I guess, but I think this is not that hard to talk about. Right-wing discourse online, whether it's like the vilification of like woke content, was always going to merge. It was the trend there. It was slightly pushed forward by The Force Awakens with the complaints about the
Mary Sue.
Mary Sue character with
Even
Rey.
though Kylo was literally shot, had just murdered his dad,
Yeah,
and
it's
like was
stupid.
just
It's stupid. It's like it's all stupid. And then The Last Jedi was an absolute fucking dumpster fire of a pushing that forward to the point like the actress of Rose, I don't think is on social media anymore. She was like horrifically like verbally, like emotionally assaulted. The character of Rey was disexamined. It pushed forward like right-wing grifters. We talk about media, critical drinker, about kind of like all this stuff. It had a incredible negative discourse on it, and it made a lot of shitty people with a lot of shitty opinions feel like their opinions need to be heard and validated, which has irrevocably caused damage to film discourse, at least online. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think it's okay to be mad at like a corporation.
Yeah.
So like to be honest, like I do think that like for example, like the whole Poe Dameron plot line like culminates in like a girl boss moment where Laura Dern and Carrie Fisher go like he's a real crazy man kind of thing. But then it's not so bad that I feel like I had to harass anybody online. I think my
Yeah.
issue with grifter media is that I think it's important to like make sure that you like our people are aware that these companies are potentially using woke values to like raise their own stocks. You know, it's not a very controversial thing to say. Like they're doing it not because they care, but because they see something to gain in it.
Yeah.
However, it's like when you go like start harassing people and like so for example, I saw a thumbnail of the like of just to explain like how long lasting the legacy of film discourse around The Last Jedi has spread throughout of like the Witcher TV show season 3, and it's like what Lord of the Rings did better in its final battle than The Witcher 3. And on one side it's male Legolas and it says good, and it's female elf in Witcher and it says bad. And again, it's like it's not even like it's misogyny, but it's not even like honest misogyny. Like it's like you're using these symbols. You're using a man with the good and a woman with the bad for reasons because you want to attract grifters to your channel and be like to continue this insane argument that women and minorities are ruining blockbuster movies.
Yeah,
and even if you watch like a critical drinker video, it's so lazily made. Like I watched like a Rings of Power video, and it was literally just like it was literally like Black Hobbit bad, black dwarf, black female dwarf, bad.
Yeah.
Literally, like this is like it's like a screenshotted image
Yeah.
from like a trailer that he took and then was saying this is bad. This is the message, the woke message, the woke media. I mean, Star Wars is so woke that they were afraid to have, you know, John Boyega kiss Daisy Ridley on the lips because they're two different races. Like
Yeah.
they're not that woke.
It's like it's the whole thing of like remember the Rise of Skywalker controversy where it's like it contains like Disney's first like LGBTQ kiss
That's
and it's
off
like
on the side and
it's off on the
easily
side and then like people make
edited
videos
out.
about it before. It's like this it's always spearheaded by The Last Jedi. I mean, again, the treatment of Rose's actress is genuinely you're like, we are bad people. Like people are bad people out there. But
Even Rise
like,
of Skywalker, where like Finn like pats her on the shoulder and it's like it's basically says like no, you're not part of this adventure, and then
yeah,
leaves her behind, and you're like, what?
yeah, you're like, what the fuck? It's wild because it's just like it's people using it's people who are homophobic, racist, sexist, transphobic, any of it, and they're just masking it through like media criticism, and they go
By like
on
objective criticism.
yeah, they go on like their stupid podcast, and
Unrelated to this podcast.
unrelated to this one, and have like there's always the funny meme of like the Star Wars video essays that are like 9 out, like the one guy who
Oh
had
yeah,
that
that guy Mahler who did
yeah,
like
who
has the
has like
thumbnail of like George Lucas looking so sad, like oh they're ruining my. It's like George Lucas is the biggest capitalist
yeah, they all
POS who slapped Star Wars on every single thing he could possibly think of and made billions of dollars out of it.
yeah,
Do not tell
it's
me that he has any sort of inherent value
yeah,
to this brand. Shut your
exactly.
mouth.
It all like this type of discourse is just like ruined online film discourse because everything now is like you can't have some like any kind of like like any kind of like criticism on like a corporation, you immediately start being like lumped in with like sides, and it's like no, dude, it's like Disney kind of sucks. Like all billion-dollar corporations are not good things.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's fine to criticize billion because it's like, oh, how much of the money did Captain Marvel made is actually donated to like women's
Yeah, like anything
causes
yeah,
or anything like did Brie Larson ever like donate any of the money she made off of Captain Marvel to any of this, or did Disney ever donate any of the money they made from Captain Marvel to like to female causes or Black Panther to any African American causes? Like, I'm willing to bet probably not.
yeah.
But
It's Disney. It's on Disney. Like it's all on these major corporations. It's not on like
but it's like the blaming like the actors. Like for example,
insane.
like Critical Drinker in the Rings of Power video, like he came and fathomed the idea that a Black person would like Lord of the Rings. It's like
Yeah.
he just assumes you assume like, oh, you're an activist because you're part of Lord of the Rings. It's like you can't like that never occurred to you that like
Yeah.
someone just happened to love Lord of the Rings and wanted to be in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they just happened to be Black. You know, it's like this thing's it's insane. It's insanity.
It's like literal insanity. It is unfathomable that people's livelihoods are created or they're frustrated because someone who isn't like white, straight, and a man is in a fantasy series. And I know
Yeah.
the argument a lot of like the discourse now is like, oh, but like the story is meant to take place in like this or represent this type of. It's like, yeah, man, but it's not fucking real. Like, who gives a shit? Like in the grand scheme of it, who gives a fuck? None of this is real. Like none of this is like something that happens in real life. Like we have to treat people better. It's just
yeah. I think it's like sort of like it's contradictory, I think, when a big corporation like Warner Bros. Disney, where they recast like a previously like white person as a person of color. Because I think like there are just so many different stories you can make from literature or from history from different cultures and adapt them into like big screen movies, but they're just too cowardly to do it. So they want to recast like a traditionally white person movie or book or historical time and then pretend like and then pat themselves on the back. I'm like, no, you take the risk. Like the Woman King that came out
Did you
last
see
year.
that movie?
Like,
That was a good movie. That was
I
a
haven't
really
seen
good
it.
movie.
I haven't seen it, but again, it's like it's a traditionally like African tale and it has African people in it. And I'm sure there are grifters who are I'm certain the Critical Drinker did a video on it as well, but
I'll find it real quick for you. Let's see if you do. I bet I can
Critical Drinker, Woman King.
Yeah, let's find out. I hate this guy. I'm gonna be honest. Like I don't care if this is nobody is gonna watch this podcast, but like
Yeah.
I don't care about like any of these people. I don't think they're good people. Oh man. Critical Drinker. No. But I mean, if you look at his channel, the most recent video 5 days ago, why modern movies sucks. Why nobody can stay dead, and it's a picture of fucking the guy from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Or it's Disney finally admit they went too far, but it's too late? ? And then 2023 is the death of the superhero movie. And guess who's front and center? Guess who does not have a fucking superhero movie in 2023?
Captain
Who
Marvel.
hasn't been in a fucking superhero movie since 2019? Like
I know.
it's absurd. It's so
and
absurd.
It's like him in the quartering, like every like couple months they're like Kathleen Kennedy kicked out of Marvel, like, or Disney. And it's like every year they come up with like this, like, and it's like eventually Kathleen Kennedy's gonna retire from like
Yeah.
old age and just move on with her life, and they're gonna go, we were right.
Yeah, we
And
did it.
it's like,
We
and he
made the
keeps saying
change.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absurd. It's Kathleen Kennedy's fault in the sense that like she should have, because I think she oversaw it, and I think she should have better structured out the sequel trilogy to make it more but it's not her fault for making the cast more diverse.
Yeah. And you know
and
what?
getting more perspectives from different people from all over the world, different backgrounds and everything.
It's crazy. It's like John Boyega's a phenomenal actor. If nobody has seen this movie because it came out on the weekend of Barbenheimer, but the Netflix movie They Clone Tyrone is like legitimately really great. Him and Jamie Foxx are legitimately great in this movie. They are good actors, and we were able to get that because Star Wars boosted his profile. And he makes good movies. He was in 2011 Attack the Block. I know he was an actor before, but when you're in a Star Wars movie, everything, like, we have Adam Driver now, not because of Star Wars, but it propelled him. And like, I wish Daisy Ridley did more stuff, but it's just like, it just kind of sucks. And the reason that we talked about this today is because like we exist in an online discourse era. We love film. We love talking about media online and examining media online. And when we're doing a movie about modern classics, you have to see what shapes the discourse that will continue for years down the line. And my hope is that these stupid fucking people, eventually it just becomes less profitable and people recognize like,
but I mean, they're getting millions of views, and like do this thing where they pick out like a plot hole, and then like it's like plot hole example of woke, plot hole example of woke, woke, like,
woke.
When I say woke, I'm saying woke jokingly.
Yeah, and woke is just Vinley Thailed LGBTQ non-white actor, non-straight. It's just like, it's all of that. It's just all Vinley Thailed.
And so like you're, especially like for like young, like, can you imagine like if we were like 10, 12, 13, like right now, watch, like, who's to say, like, I probably like, there's a good chance I would drink the Kool-Aid, like, if I was like a young mind.
But that's the thing, is like, I taught in schools, it's prevalent, it's there. These kids are consuming content of like the Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, Critical Drinker, like these minds that are just propelling people to be shittier people. And it sucks. And it's really not fun because this, like, you like this movie more than I do. I'm imagining, based on you're probably gonna give it like 3 stars on Letterboxd.
Probably 3 or 3.5.
Yeah, I don't like this movie. I don't think it's a very good movie. I think it has potential, but I don't give a fuck about, like, it doesn't, like, I watched this movie and the only thing I've thought about it is, oh man, I can't wait to talk about it with you. Like, this is gonna be great to talk about. Like, I've examined it, not like, man, my Star Wars movie had a woman in it. Like, this is not like, that's not, I don't understand how these people exist. And I know it's a grift, and I know they do it because it gives them millions of dollars, but it just, it like ruins film discourse. And that sucks because it's really,
it's and then it's like, I feel like Andor comes out, which is like unapologetically like actually liberal, in a sense where it's like the message of the movie is that like all Republicans are fascists. And like, I'm over exaggerating, but like that's kind of like that's the general idea of the show. And it's like, they didn't criticize that because it's well written, and like, it has like a great story. It's like, that's where they go. It's like a lot of like these people, like, their backdrop to make it sound like they're not like racist and misogynist is to go like, but the writing's not good, look at this plot hole and this plot hole and this plot hole, like, whereas Andor doesn't have it, so they're forced to say it's a good show because they can't, because then they'd only be relying on like their prejudices and things like that. So like, it did start with Last Jedi. A lot of them mirrored like the Mr. Plinkett review formula, where like they do like long video essays, but like, whereas Red Letter Media guys aren't racist or misogynist and like actually worked in think critically about them. Like, these people are, it's like the thinly veiled. They yell at the message in Disney movies, the message, and then yet all their content has like an underlying conservative message about it. Where they're just doing it for money, basically. And
stupid. Stupid. It all sucks. I'm glad we could get this out of the way. Considering this is already going long, I completely agree with all of your points and stuff like that. Would you make this a modern classic? And this will be the toughest one we have yet, because
I have to say no, because I think this is the movie that turned people against Star Wars. Again.
Yeah,
like, this is the movie where, because like Rogue One it was fine, but like, this is the movie where people started to realize they were, as I said at the start of the podcast, like like this is where like the cracks started to show, and I don't think
Yep.
Star Wars has ever like this is what I think dropped it from mainstream obsession was The
Yeah.
Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Because like
I mean,
I don't think Rise of Skywalker did as well as this movie.
no, but
Um,
that was also like that came out around Christmas and then got hit by COVID, I think.
yeah, COVID was like but I mean over around the world as well. So
Yeah, it was
yeah,
like
you're
it got
right.
hit a little bit. So like my whole thing is like I'm gonna say our whole concept is like, does it raise anything? Does it change anything? And when we look back, why we said Iron Man was a modern classic is because when 50 years down the line and people go either superhero movies are dead or they're still going, people are gonna go like, what really started it? And they're gonna look back and Iron Man's gonna be that one. People, I think, yeah, you're right. It like lessened the cultural Star Wars property and then propelled it into something worse. But at the same time, when we look back at either a divided America, which we don't have to get super political even more, but like they will not think about Star Wars The Last Jedi. It will just be something that propelled it forward, but not the reason it went forward. It was just a vehicle and a stepping stone for people to give their opinions. And it's not a very good movie. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say
again,
no.
I mean, Ryan Johnson's the only person who was really elevated from like he got his
Yeah.
Knives Out movies and stuff. So like
Yeah.
his stock increased, but he lost his Star Wars trilogy, which he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
John
yeah,
Boyega.
I like this
Yeah.
movie. Is like this movie is not a modern classic,
No.
even though like I think it had a potential of being, but I think like it killed film discourse, which isn't really movie's fault.
Yeah.
I mean the plot holes are the movie's fault, but they could have predicted like millions of people would take out the plot holes on people of color and
That's
and women.
Yeah, it's
Um,
awful. So
but
not
yeah,
modern classic.
nope.
That makes sense. I'm glad we were able to talk about this because
I
this
think we
is
talked about it in a like I tried to throw them a little bit of a bone with but like again and then it just
Yeah.
divulged into no this is it ruined film discourse, and film discourse now is complete crap.
Yeah, complete garbage. Thanks, Last Jedi, and thanks, Critical Drinker. You stupid fuck. Sorry, you piece of shit. I don't give a fuck. Who cares? He's an idiot. He's like legitimately dumb. I think he's like actually like I think those people are like legitimately stupid. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, I think YMS called him out like recently. Like he did like a video where he was.
Nah, I remember seeing that and he called him out, but it was like I don't dislike YMS in any capacity. I just don't like how he reviews movies but doesn't change my opinion about it.
Yeah.
I think he's got great insight. Like his Old Boy video is like legitimately phenomenal. But like I don't like nobody's scared to be like, dude, you're just like you're doing this for money. Like you're stupid. Like it would be like a lot easier just to look at him and be like, you're like really dumb. Like you're really dumb.
And you can trust us because we're not making a cent.
Yeah, we're not making a cent out of this. We're doing this for the love of ourselves. But yeah, Matt, that brings us to the end of this. I think we just ranted about Star Wars. We did it. We never have to do it again. Thank God. Unless a Star Wars movie is like monumentally life-changing that comes out in the next 3 years, but we haven't
in
died
our season 2. We're gonna do episode by episode.
Episode by episode. The
reviews.
Andor. Yeah, instead of film frauds, it's film Andor frauds. Matt, where can you find us? What can we do?
You can find us at Apple Podcasts. Yes, Spotify, YouTube.
Yes, anywhere you can get a
Letterboxd.
podcast. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
So let's
what movie during next that stars mostly white people?
White old men. We're gonna do The Irishman. We're watching a 3.5-hour movie, which thank God you won't be able to tell this because the episodes come out week by week, but we will come back and record in 2 weeks because being like, hey man, next week I move next week, so I would not have been able to do it next week anyways.
I need 2 weeks to watch this whole movie.
I know, seriously. And I want to watch a couple Scorsese stuff, a couple blind spots. I want to see, like, I haven't seen Casino. I haven't seen Mean Streets. I want to rewatch Goodfellas because Irishman we'll talk about that more. But yeah, we're doing The Irishman. Matt, any final thoughts before we go watch the Patriots lose miserably? Hopefully not.
What's the score right now?
Let's find out. Let's see. Oh, I'm on the Critical Drinker YouTube channel. Wonderful. Oh, they're up 10-0.
Oh,
yeah.
And that, the thing is now that you clicked in one Critical Drinker video, your whole recommendation list is going to be Critical Drinker videos.
Yeah, and like Mahler and
because YouTube
people.
is so woke that all they do is push. If you like skim over a Critical Drinker thumbnail, you refresh your YouTube page and it's just and this is
Yeah.
all critical drinker
Yeah.
videos.
I'm not
Because
looking forward to that.
that's how woke YouTube is trying to
Yeah.
keep the grifters down.
Yeah,
is
they're
by
trying to
doing
keep
this.
it down. Yeah. Oh my God. Can't believe this is now on the internet forever.
I mean, it's
all
like an hour and 20 minutes in, so no one's gonna get to this point.
yeah, we're good. We're okay. Matt, this was fun. Thank you for joining me and us on the Last Jedi experience. Next week we're doing The Irishman. Yeah, all right. This is the end of the episode. I have no idea how to ever end these things. I'm glad I don't know how to fucking end these things. All right.
It's about family,
Family.
and that's what matters.
That's what matters. All right, family. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys again in the next episode. Bye-bye.